Welcome to the kingdom. I'm Chris, and this is Good Enough Gaming. Howdy folks, and welcome to this video, which is a bit of a follow-up to the video I previously released about why there's a stigma associated with gaming. Now in this video, I wanted to look at the flip side and explore all of the benefits and positive things that come from gaming.
It's good! It's good! It's good!
So in this video, like the last one, I'm going to focus primarily on tabletop gaming, which to me includes miniature games, board games, and role-playing games. I'm not necessarily leaving out video games, because in some areas, video games absolutely provide benefits like social interaction. But in other respects, like serving as a creative outlet, it doesn't quite overlap as much. Sure, there are games where you build, plan, and design, which are clearly creative, but you don't paint anything in a video game. You don't kit bash in a video game. So I'm going to let someone else make the case specifically for video games, because I still believe there is a case to be made. But here, we're going to look at games that use dice, cards, miniatures, and a physical presence on a tabletop. So the next time someone starts giving you crap about gaming being a waste of time, hit them with one of these. First of all, relaxation. It's the simplest, but I think one of the most compelling reasons. It provides leisure and relaxation. Everybody has something that they do to unwind. Some read books, some watch TV, some play a sport, go to the gym, cook. The list is endless. Gaming, in this regard, is quite literally just another hobby. People paint minis and play games for the same reason others crochet or birdwatch. It's something that brings them peace, relaxation, and a bit of an escape from the daily grind. Someone might not think it's a very good hobby, but so what? There are plenty of hobbies out there that I think are stupid, but the other person likes doing it. They're not breaking any laws, so to each their own. Honestly, you shouldn't need a further explanation than this, but in case you do, let's continue. Next up, a sense of accomplishment. Closely tied to relaxation, the hobby side of tabletop gaming can bring a sense of accomplishment. After completing a paint job, finishing a campaign that you designed from scratch, or building a new piece of terrain for the tabletop. As a personal anecdote, my wife is much more supportive of me spending time with wargaming than with, say, computer games, because, as she put it, you have something to show for it when you're done. Now, anyone who's finished the main storyline in a video game, especially a difficult one, knows very well that there is a sense of accomplishment, but it's hard for people who don't share that hobby to understand the excitement. But even if they don't play tabletop games, they can see dozens of models that you've painstakingly painted out on display, and at the very least they can appreciate the time and dedication you put into it. And for those who have been in the hobby for decades, you can probably look back at hundreds, maybe even thousands of models and think to yourself, holy cow, I painted all of those. Another benefit to gaming is a potential side hustle. Closely related to the sense of accomplishment and the fact that many tabletop hobbies end with the creation of something tangible, some folks discover that they're pretty darn good at it. You guys ever hear of Ninjon? He currently has a very successful YouTube channel dedicated to painting minis. He was friends with the Miniac, another YouTube mini painter who introduced him to painting minis. Now, I don't recall the whole story, but from the video I watched, Ninjon had never painted minis before. He decided to give it a shot, and within that same year, he submitted a mini to a major painting competition and won. It was almost his first mini and his first competition, and he won. From there, he went on to become a well-known and established YouTuber, and I think now it's his job. Others like him who discover a knack for the hobby, whether it's painting on commission or building scenery to sell on Etsy, the hobby can turn into a potential business opportunity, and for some, it even becomes their primary source of income. I mean, when I painted my first mini back in high school and then got curb stomped in my first game shortly thereafter, YouTube didn't even exist. Now, I've got a YouTube channel that, while I certainly won't be quitting my day job anytime soon, it allows me to put a little more money into the hobby than I could previously. There aren't too many folks who can turn a side gig out of watching TV or reading books. And think about how many games there are out there. If you have a great idea for a game, you just might get the best of all worlds and become a game designer like One Page Rules, who has built a career out of a passion project based on a hobby. The next benefit is probably one of the most obvious ones, the creative outlet. Even if you don't become a commission painter, Etsy business owner, start a YouTube channel, develop a new game, tabletop gaming still provides a creative outlet for folks to let the right side of their brain take over every once in a while. Most of us probably work in some kind of job that's very structured, organized, and more than likely dedicated from someone several tiers higher than you. The 9 to 5 is filled with following policy, filling orders, meeting deadlines, corporate and business stuff. In addition to being relaxing, tabletop games gives folks a chance to stretch their imaginations.
You're the creator. Anything that you want, you can build here. This is your world.
It could be learning or improving your painting skills, coming up with your own paint scheme, designing a role-playing game campaign, building tabletop terrain, or designing your own game. Lots of players enjoy developing backstory for their armies, but word to the wise here, typically avoid sharing your extensive army lore unless the other person asks for it. Or maybe at the very least keep it to 2 to 3 sentences. I once got to listen to a player read 3 pages of typed lore backstory for their army. Unbidden, mind you. And after a new person entered the store later and came over to talk with us, I got to hear it read again. And then later that day, when I got to hear it read for the 3rd time, I started wondering if you could still paint in prison if you're put there for murder. Now, there's another benefit to gaming, and that's real-world experience. So while I've talked about gaming being an escape from the real world and a way to stretch your imagination and creative side, gaming also provides real-world skill practice. Building a 2,000-point army? That's budgeting. Wrestling with your pile of shame? That's resource management and self-discipline. Running a campaign provides basic team leadership and organization skills. Running even larger events like organized tournaments provides more advanced leadership and organizational skills. If it's not out already, there's an episode of the Line of Sight podcast where I interview someone who puts on a massive gaming convention in Central Virginia that had over 1,000 attendees last year. Organizing an event like that is the kind of thing you could actually put on your resume. Right there, a line, organized 3-day public event for over 1,000 people. Even playing games provides practical skill practice. Tactics is using critical thinking. I once heard a local game store owner say that 40K is just target priority. What enemy units are you most likely able to kill that turn? That will be the biggest loss to your opponent. Now keep this in mind, this was before the introduction of complex missions to 40K with secondary objectives and scoring points each round. Every game of 40K back then was basically kill, kill, kill for 4 turns and then grab objectives on turn 5. But to be able to determine target priority, you need to take a lot into consideration, balancing risk and reward, looking at your stats, looking at your opponent's stats. And if you're a tournament player, you have to learn to do this kind of thinking under pressure with time clocks forcing you to act quickly. Now for young players, tabletop wargames teach basic math, as well as learning to do things like reading the pips on a dice, or multiply how many shots does a 5-man squad get if each guy gets so many shots per weapon. Gaming also teaches statistics. I'm sure most of us have heard the term math hammer. Since most tabletop games use dice, a large portion of the game is governed by statistics, except of course in my case where the dice gods have assigned me a personal angel or demon. I'm not sure which it is yet, but their whole job is to mess with my dice rolls consistently and make sure the laws of statistics and physics do not function on my tabletops. Anyways, if you're building a list and wondering if it's better to have a unit with 3 shots hitting on a 3+ or 5 shots hitting on a 4+, that's statistics. Now the next item here is one that a lot of people also would readily acknowledge: social interaction. It's a benefit that could be added to the real-world skills list, but I think it deserves a bit more attention. Now, I don't have any data to back this up, but I have a sneaking suspicion that a large portion, if not the majority, of tabletop gamers are introverts, shy, maybe a bit socially awkward. I know I am all three of those. Now, I've gotten better with age, time, and experience, but most gamers I meet aren't exactly social butterflies. Gaming gives players a way to have healthy interaction with others, build their social skills, establish friend groups. In my video on game shaming, there were several comments about the gaming group. One viewer even commented that they had two totally separate groups of friends, one for sports and one for gaming. And they mentioned that other than the person making the comment, there was no overlap between those two groups. As humans, we are social creatures. We need a group. Now, I'm not a psychologist here, but introverts prefer smaller groups with a stronger bond than big crowds. They feel way more at home playing Dungeons and Dragons in a group of 5 to 6 people than going to a sporting event with thousands and thousands. And since folks who play tabletop games also tend to follow other nerdy hobbies like reading sci-fi, fantasy, manga, watching anime, playing other tabletop games or board games, card games, RPGs, gaming provides the group or community that's very difficult for shy introverts to create on their own. And so once they find that one group, they've probably just found connections to groups with all their other nerdy hobbies. This next benefit didn't become a benefit until recently: a break from screens. In the mid-19th century, Henry David Thoreau lamented that the impact of industrialization on America was a bad thing by saying, "We don't ride the railroads ride us." Now sure, the railroads were a convenience, but life was being fundamentally altered to accommodate the advances in technology driven by the Industrial Revolution. Heck, we have time zones now because of how quickly things traveled on the railroads, and we needed time zones to coordinate itineraries. Workdays became governed by the clock instead of by the sun. People had designated start times, lunch hours, end of day. That's why Thoreau did his little experiment going and living the minimalist lifestyle at Walden Pond. And I wonder what he would say if he saw the degree to which we are enslaved by our phones. So the next benefit of gaming addresses that. It's a break from screen time and from social media. Now, while it might not be physical exercise out in the fresh air, tabletop gaming is a great way to take a break from screens and to use social media for more positive and productive uses, like organizing a game night, showing off finished models, posting memes about the hobby. Now, parents who think their kids need to get off their phones can encourage them to pick up a trading card game, a board game, or a miniatures game. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and we recently started playing Lorcana so that she and I had something we could do together that didn't involve screens. She's already made new friends at the game store, and there's another girl her age who they've played together quite a bit. And while they're 9 and 8 years old, they don't exactly quote-unquote play the game, but you can hear them laughing and giggling throughout the store. So I'm just fine with the fact that they might not be strictly playing a game. Another benefit is what I call double duty. Now, I know I just talked about how gaming can be a break from screens, but there is a benefit from gaming that actually uses screens, and that's listening while you hobby. I do this all the time. Sometimes it's just fun or pointless stuff, but in one year, I listened to The Silmarillion, The Hobbit, and The Lord of the Rings trilogy, all in one big go while I painted and built an entire army. Sometimes I listen to a popular bestseller, but other times I'll listen to something that would be considered great literature. Earlier this year, it was A Tale of Two Cities. Before that, it was Thomas More's Utopia. And it was also a way that I finally read through the first books in Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. I know for a fact I would not have been able to force myself to sit in a chair and read any of those. I couldn't do it. I've actually tried. But if someone else is reading it while I paint, and I can pay attention while my hands and mind are kept busy painting models and stuff, I found it was a great way to get two things done at once. Now, it hasn't always worked. I trailed off partway through Paradise Lost, and the sheer size of Gulag Archipelago forced a break that I just haven't gone back to finish yet. But I've listened to lectures, conference papers, and TED Talks when they weren't stupid. All the things I probably would never have done by myself, just sitting at a computer to watch or listen. So building and painting provided a way for me to engage with what folks would consider more intellectually stimulating content that otherwise I probably wouldn't. Now, don't get me wrong. For every one of these great literature books, there's a stand-up comedian, a bat rep, or a novel, or something that's just, fun to listen to. My particular interest, post-apocalyptic stuff. So if any of you, by the way, have any recommendations for post-apocalyptic books or movies, put them down in the comments below. So that, I think, is the major benefits of tabletop gaming. And when I started thinking about making a video about this, I actually reached out to you, the community, to tell me what things you got out of gaming, in case I missed any. Now, many of you echoed the reasons mentioned above, which is good. It reinforces those arguments and shows that they are indeed popular and they do hold water. But there are a few others that I wanted to mention here. For example, Ariel Feltz repeats the creative outlet, but then expands on that concept by mentioning that one's halls can be festooned with the entrails of their enemies. I think just maybe, there could be a rewriting of Deck the Halls with a more grimdark theme, no? Next, Gareth Baldwin has a very unique and interesting take. Gareth is a therapist and uses gaming as a part of treatment for communication and emotional regulation. Now, if I could get a doctor's note that says I'm required to get so many hours of gaming and hobbying in a week, I would be a happy man. Now, some of you might say, but Chris, you are a doctor. Well, yes, but I'm not the useful kind. Dean Rogers here says it's meeting all the young ladies. And I'm thinking, what, both of them? Nice! Elder Geeks provides a benefit that several other commenters mentioned, an outlet for competitiveness, a chance to match wits with someone. And he says at the end, sometimes I just need to pull off a successful pincer maneuver. I hear you, Elder Geeks. I mean, don't we all? So, thanks to everybody who offered their 2 bits. Thanks to everyone for watching. And until next time, keep your dice on the table.